Thank you, Daniel. My name is Olivia B, and I am an alcoholic.
Hey, Olivia.
My sobriety birth date is June the 10th, 2011, and for that I'll be forever grateful. My home group is Primary Purpose Group as well in Wilson, and we meet on Mondays and Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. We have just started meeting back in person, and I am beyond grateful for that. I've been grateful for Zoom because I cannot even imagine going months and months without a meeting because my head can get crazy. But there is a strength and a spirit within the in-person meetings for me that I longed and had missed so much. And I'm so glad we're meeting in person again. But we do that at 7 o'clock, and you can still Zoom in if you feel unsafe to come for any reason. And so tonight is our speaker meeting on Thursday nights, every Thursday. And then on Monday nights, we do the big book the first week. We do a step out of the 12 and 12 the second week. The third week, we do the big book again. The fourth week, we do a tradition meeting. And if we have a fifth Monday, we do a history meeting, believing that if we don't study history, we're doomed to repeat it. So I will dive on into why y'all asked me to speak. I will tell you a little bit what I was like, what happened to me, and what I'm like today. So I grew up in Kinston, a little town pretty near Wilson, about 45 minutes away. And if you had asked me when I came in, I had a horrible childhood. I had terrible parents. I could tell you everything nobody ever gave me and everything that was done to me, and I was a victim. And if you'd had my life, you would drink too. After good sponsorship, after being fed from all of y'all, and from going through the steps, I know today that I grew up in a home with two loving parents who did the very best they could with me, with what they had been taught and what their experience, strength, and hope were. And the amazing thing about, to me, for AA is I have this wonderful family now through all of y'all. I mean, even if I haven't met you, if you're sitting in the room tonight, or the AA meeting tonight, I should say instead, you are my family. Whether you want to be or not, I consider you my family. And that has been an amazing gift to have this large family within Wilson, within all the different places in North Carolina, through conventions that I've gotten to meet. I've met the most loving people. And if you are new, I hope that you will find the love and the peace in AA that I have found, that it's been the biggest gift in the world. So anyway, as a child moving along, I was full of fear. I don't know that I realized that that's what it was. Fear of not getting what I wanted. Fear of someone taking something away from me that I thought I was owed. Everything in my world revolved around me and what I wanted. And I reacted to everything that happened in my life based on whatever I was feeling at that moment. So if I was happy, I was probably fine to be around. But if I was sad, you were supposed to be sad with me, or I was going to make you feel sad. And if I was upset or angry with you, you would know I was angry. There was no filter for me. And the next time I saw you, I would replay in my head exactly what you had said that had made me mad over and over again. And that's how I was. I probably wouldn't remember the nice things you did for me, but if you did something wrong, I definitely remembered that. And I remembered what you were wearing and the way you said it. And every time I saw you, I would replay it over and over again. And that's the way I lived my life. Today, I don't have to live that way. I can let things go. I know no one's perfect. I'm nowhere near perfect. And I hope that people forgive me for things that I say. And y'all have taught me how to put myself in other people's shoes and how to clean up my side of the street and how to let things go. That resentments are not something that I do well with. And that when I hold those on, I block God out of my life. And to me, I call him God, but whoever your higher power might be. So y'all showed me a different way to live, and I didn't think any of that was possible. So moving on through high school, I only drank one time, but I remember I actually had gone for junior senior, and I had a guy friend of mine who fell off the balcony and ruptured his spleen and was bleeding out. And I was the first one there, and I was covered in blood and went to the hospital with him. And I couldn't get over when I came back that everybody was still drinking. And so I was like the designated driver for the rest of the weekend, and just thought it was so crazy everyone was drinking. And how could they make choices like that? Well, I held on to that till about college. And then I thought, what do you do when you're in college? Well, you're supposed to drink. And I remember going out and thought it was a lot of fun. I had a big group of girls, and we were all supposed to be chugging this big 40. And I remember afterwards thinking, I didn't do a great job with that, and I'm going to get better at that. And it's not going to take me so long to drink that 40. I'm going to be able to chug it down and be done with it. Like these were my college goals, was I was going to learn how to drink better. And remember loving that I felt a part of with everyone. Just had a great time with it. Lots of fun in college. I don't remember having any moments. I blacked out one time, but other than that, I was basically a social drinker in college. My grandpa got real sick. He was the most important person in the entire world to me. And when he died, I used that as an excuse to get really angry at God, and thought that if he took my grandpa away, he didn't love me and he didn't care about me. And I always watched, I love drama. I love to create my own drama. So like if I'd seen something in a movie and my life started symbolizing that, I would try to remember like what the actress did in that movie. And so like, oh, someone's died in your family, you're supposed to be sad, you're supposed to listen to sad music and write poetry and just, so I would go into that development. That's what I would become, was this sad person. And I wanted everyone to be sad with me, and everybody was supposed to stop their life and be sad with me. And that was the first time that I remember like drinking to kind of deal with an emotion. Then later I met a guy that I never kind of knew who I was. Like I said, I just took on whatever role of what I thought I was supposed to be at the time. And this guy it was the most abusive and physical and emotional abusive relationship I've ever been in. And when that relationship ended, I thought, what do people do when they break up with someone? Well, he had left me, but anyway, what happens? What do you do? Well, you drink and you have a good time and you go out. So I never cried, but I started drinking to deal with that. And that started soon becoming my new substitute for life. If there was something that I didn't want to feel or didn't want to deal with, I would just drink to make it go away. And in my mind, I rationalized it that, well, I had gone through this relationship that had broken up. And then I met another guy, and he had his life together and had a good job and wasn't a big drinker. And so, well, that's what I'll become then. Like, I'm going to go back to school and, I'll just start over and figure out my life now. And it was this other guy who just, messed me up. So I moved to Raleigh and went back to school, and I did everything in extremes. I worked really hard. I had a job, I went to school, and I drank. And I did each one of those two extremes. And that was the first time that I started having those stories of, we left the bar and you didn't want to leave the bar. So at the stoplight, you jumped out and ran back to the bar. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. And you were drinking so much that, like, apparently my boyfriend at the time had tried to keep me from getting in the car, and I got mad at him and punched him. And I was like, that didn't sound like me. I can't believe I did that. And they're like, oh, yeah, you did. And waking up and finding throw up in my bed and wondering who had done that, realizing it was me and going, oh my gosh, and they said, yeah, they cut you off at the downtown Raleigh bar. You had CO on your hands. You were asking for vodka and they were giving you water. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Like, who cut somebody off in Raleigh? And just couldn't get over, like, I didn't have a lot of stories like that in college. So I didn't pay a whole lot of mind to it. I just thought, well, everybody has those stories, and this is my time to have those stories. So anyway, it continued to I just drank to extreme, but like I said, I was doing well in school, so I didn't think anything about it. I got married. I moved to Wilson, and Wilson was where I had first been to to start off with. And my whole goal was to get out of Wilson. So when I came back to Wilson after I got married, I fell into this whole world of like location. It's not me, it's everything else here. And I never wanted to live in Wilson. If you lived in Wilson, you would drink too. And, you know, woe is me. Like, all these people were so terrible to me the first time. Like, I just can't stand to be here. And if I have to live here, I have to drink. And I would come up with a way to rationalize any behavior that I wanted to have. You know, if I was, like I said, I thought every emotion that I had, I was supposed to immediately react to it. I didn't respond to life, I reacted to life. And so I went to school. There was about 3 months in between before I started nursing school, and was like, well, what am I supposed to do for 3 months? Well, my mother-in-law had given us a bar for our wedding gift. And so I decided to try everything in the bar. And that was the first time that I started hiding my drinking, where I would put water in the vodka bottle to try to fill it back up, Diet Coke in the rum bottle. And I was trying to hide my drinking so that when my husband got home, he didn't realize how much I'd had to drink. We had wine bottles that someone had given us, and I was running to the store after I'd started drinking, knowing that I would finish the bottle, and trying to find the same bottle of wine to replace it so that when he got home, it looked like the bottle was still there. Well, after a while, that was just way too much work, and I just started replacing it with any other wine bottle and not even caring anymore. And it just kept going downhill from there. How I got through nursing school, I have no idea. I did, though, and started working as a nurse and had a ton of alcoholics on my floor, actually, and never once was able to relate, I guess. I didn't identify with the alcoholics I was taking care of. It's just part of the disease, I think, for me, that baffling and cunning part of where I would listen to them tell sad stories, the wife, and about how she had divorced her husband because he wouldn't stop drinking, and he had this pumpkin skin and jaundiced yellow eyes, and I was having to give him lactulose to try to get him to get rid of the ammonia in his body. And was just like, this is so sad, I can't believe this. Meanwhile, I get in the car and I would stop by the ABC store or the Harris Teeter, and I would drink the whole way home, and not once seeing any comparison at all that I was doing the exact same thing. I ended up having a son. I would love to say after I had my son that everything was great, but it wasn't. I made it about 3 weeks before I started drinking again. And I remember sitting outside of the Target and in tears crying because I knew I was going to go in there and buy more wine. I knew it was going to start all over again. And I was one of those people who always thought that something was going to fix me. Like, I just hadn't found the right thing yet, or the right moment, the right job. You know, oh, I need to go back to school, that'll fix me. I need to find the right guy, that'll fix me. I need to get married, that's what's wrong with me. I need to have a child, that'll make everything right. And then every time all those emotions that I had that I didn't want to have were still there, and they didn't go away, I would just get more depressed. So now, on top of being self-centered and fearful and angry, I was depressed. And, you know, I had all these other new emotions. Why can't I be a good mom? I wanted this child my whole life. Why can't I take care of him? Why isn't this enough for me? Why am I so sad? Why does it bother me that he's screaming? Why can't I do right? I know all these other people who can take care of their child. Why is this so hard for me? And so I had all these other new emotions, and I rationalized those too. I know how to make that go away. I would just drink and it would go away, at least for a moment. It would stop the voices in my head that were telling me I wasn't good enough and that I couldn't do it, and that I couldn't be a good mom and I couldn't be a good wife, and I just was never going to be happy, and I needed those voices to just stop. And so my drinking continued to get worse, and the more I wanted to stop, the more I realized I couldn't stop. And my husband finally decided that he was going to put me in rehab. Well, I know how to manipulate him, and I started trying to make him feel guilty for trying to put me in rehab, and told him he couldn't take me away from my son. And so he had a lady come stay with me. and I had decided not to go back to work. I said at the time that I couldn't be away from my son for 12 hours, but really I couldn't be away from drinking for 12 hours. And so a lady would come and stay at the house with me with my son because he no longer felt like he could go to work and know that I would safely take care of my son. And so she would come and sit from 8 to 5 o'clock while he went to work. And whereas I at least had guilt and worry about taking care of him, now I knew somebody was going to take care of him. So I was going to be a good mom, and I would go to the grocery store to go buy him applesauce, and then I would buy a huge bottle of wine. And I would take my son for a walk in the stroller, but stroll up to the gas station and buy wine and stick it in the bottom of the stroller and walk around the neighborhood. And it just continued to get worse and worse. My actions took me to rehab, and it took me a long time to say that because I would have told you before that my husband took me to rehab, but my choices took me to rehab. My disease, my drinking did. And he had told me that if I didn't stop, that I was going to go. And I told him that I had never really tried to stop, and I just needed the weekend to get myself together. Well, when he got home, I was drunk already. I couldn't even make it through a few hours. So I went to rehab, and while I was in rehab, I relapsed twice. And one of the times I just left rehab, stole my car keys, drove to a hotel, and drank the entire night, and then turned myself back in the next day. And the second time that they were going to kick me out, I decided that I was not going to be kicked out of rehab, that was not going on my record, and that I was going to just leave. So I left in the middle of the night and drove back to Wilson and just surprised my husband. I'm back. They let me out of rehab, and showed up at 11 o'clock at night and did what every good mom does and picked up my son and told him that mommy was home and that I wasn't going to leave him again. I had missed his first birthday in rehab. I missed his first Christmas in rehab. And the best things that happened to me in rehab was for the first time ever, I was introduced to AA. Through nursing school, through all the stuff that had happened, no one had ever mentioned AA to me. I'd seen a psychologist who had given me a shot to try to make me not drink. I had gone to a hospital for the weekend to dry out. I tried antabuse. None of that had worked for me at all. And nobody had mentioned AA. So I was introduced to AA at rehab. And the other wonderful thing that happened to me there was I finally realized that I loved my son. In the middle of trying to drink away all the hate and guilt and self-pity that I had also numbed myself out from ever being able to connect to my son or to love him. And through the dry drunk feelings that I had of all these emotions that poured back into me when I wasn't drinking, I realized that I really loved him, and putting him back in the car and hearing him scream and not wanting to be separated from me was terrible. And my husband, that sweet man, would drive every Sunday 4 hours up to Richmond, Virginia, or to Williamsburg to see me, even in a snowstorm, so that I could spend 4 hours with them, and then he would drive home. And I don't know if I would have done that for him. I can't believe, I'm so grateful that he did do that for me. So those were two wonderful things that happened in rehab. And so for that, I'm grateful that I went. When I left, they told me that I was the worst case alcoholic they had ever seen the disease progress in someone of my age, and that I was hopeless and that I would never get sober. And if I had even a chance in the world, that AA would be my only possibility. And so that really stuck in my head. And as soon as I got home, I started trying to look for a meeting. And I didn't get a good schedule. I'm sure I could have done better, but I started drinking again after 3 days of being home. And I had learned just enough to be dangerous, and had told my husband that two people made a meeting. And so if I didn't feel like going to my meetings, I would just sit down and read to him out of the big book. And I would tell him I used AA to get to the meeting as an excuse to get out of the house, and I would get him to drop me off, and then I would call a cab and I would get them to drive me over to the ABC store, and I would sit outside. It was at the hospital, and I would tell the guy in the taxi cab that I had a family member that was dying in the hospital, And that's why I needed them to pick me up there. And I would drink outside the hospital and wait for my husband to pick me up. And he could never figure out how he was dropping me off at the meeting, and yet I was drunk when he would pick me up. And I was just a hot mess. And then I finally started actually going into the meetings. But as I've learned, sitting in a meeting does not get you sober. If you're not open, and I wasn't open, I wasn't willing, I wasn't listening. I was sitting and taking up a chair, and that was about it. But what I did get from it was everyone was so happy and loving and kind. And they kept telling me to come back and not to give up. And they just kept loving on me. And nobody wanted me around. Nobody wanted to spend time with me. My family was done with me. They were doing anything they could to get rid of me. And y'all just kept loving on me and welcoming me back in, no matter what shape I was in. And someone was always nice enough to, if my husband wasn't there, to drive me home, and they would make sure I got home safely. And they just kept saying, just keep coming back. And slowly, y'all started planting those seeds. And I finally got a sponsor. And I was very, very stubborn. I'm grateful today for everything I went through. And y'all have taught me that means being grateful for all of it, not just today, but everything that I had to go through to get to my surrendering point. And so I'm not proud of the things I tell you, but this is what happened to me. And she would tell me what to do, or give me suggestions. And she would say, call me at 9:00, and I'd call her at 9:15 because she just said to call her, and that was close enough in my mind. And I knew she would be on her way trying to go into work, so I wouldn't really have to talk to her, but I would so much call her. And she would give me other suggestions, and I would pick and choose what I wanted to do, because I didn't think that I was as bad off as everyone else. I still, in my mind, I thought I still had my house, and I still had my son, and I didn't lose my job. I quit my job. And what I came to finally realize was those were yets for me. And really, I lived in a house, but it wasn't my house. It was my husband's house. I was able to live there because of him. I had quit my job, but they should have fired me, honestly. And my son was about to be taken away from me. And honestly, anyone could have walked in the middle of that and have legally taken him away from me, and would have had every right to. But at the time, I didn't understand that. And so when she would give me these suggestions, like I said, I would pick and choose what to do. But I wanted to keep coming back. I wanted more of what y'all had. Y'all seemed happy. I'd heard your stories. I wanted to get sober, but I wanted the quick and easy way. I wanted to sit in the meetings long enough to hear what the answer was. And I wanted to do that one thing to figure out how to control my drinking so I could get back to living my life the way I wanted to. And I struggled that way for a really long time. And I didn't understand why I couldn't get sober. It would be 7 days I could put together, maybe 11 days. My sponsor kept saying, well, get in the book when you can put 14 days together. And so I'd get to 11 days, and then I'd have to celebrate the fact that I was so close to being almost to 14 days. And I just kept relapsing over and over. And that went on for months. And it just kept getting worse. And finally, I realized what happened to me was how much I was struggling with that very, very first step. And it talks about it. And like I said, I grew up in church. I believed in God. I talked to God like he was Santa Claus. I prayed to him when I needed something, and when I wanted to demand something from him, and when I wanted him to fix something. But I never had a conversation with him or talked to him how y'all have taught me to do, how to treat him like my best friend, to share everything with him, the good, the bad, to make that daily habit. Just like today, this week has been a challenging week, and y'all have taught me to make habits of things. And so it doesn't work to say the serenity prayer just if I need it, but if I practice saying it every single day, that peace comes when I hear it. So today, when it's been a struggle of a day, when y'all read the 12 steps, I felt my whole body take a huge relief. I just felt my shoulders go down 2 inches, and I took a deep breath for the first time today. And that is the gift of this program, is that is now what alcohol used to do for me. When I was sitting outside the ABC store and I was sitting outside the Target, the relief would come to me before I'd even touched the bottle, because I knew that it was coming. I knew that at that point, I was about to get my hands on the alcohol. I was going to put it in my body, and there was going to be a solution for me. For a little bit of time, I was not going to feel whatever I didn't want to feel. And now I get that from AA. I get that from my prayers and meditations in the morning. I get that from talking to God. I get that from my sponsor. I get that from being in a meeting with y'all, with my family. And I get that when I hear the 12 steps and 12 traditions. Is before the meeting has even really started, seeing your faces, hearing the 12 steps, and my shoulders go down, and that's a gift. That is an absolute gift. And I know today that I don't ever have to be alone unless I choose to be. It's always my choice if I do that. But the part that I struggled with for so long, so the very first step where it says, I completely believed that I was powerless over alcohol. It finally got to the point where I realized every time that I put alcohol in my body that something bad happened. The part I struggled with over and over again was the second part, that my life was unmanageable. And I thought that it was great if I could stop drinking, but like once I stopped drinking, I should be able to make all my own choices, because that was my only problem in my mind. And I believed in God, so I didn't understand why I kept praying to God to take away the desire to drink, but it wasn't going away. And my sponsor kept pointing out to me, well, you can't pour alcohol down your throat and pray for God to make it go away. You have to stop drinking. But this was mine. So this is from the 12 and 12. It says, for just so long as we were convinced that we could live exclusively by our own individual strength and intelligence, for just that long was a working faith in a higher power impossible. This was true even when we believed that God existed. We could actually have earnest religious beliefs which remained barren because we were still trying to play God ourselves. As long as we placed self-reliance first, a genuine reliance upon a higher power was out of the question. That basic ingredient of all humility, a desire to seek and do God's will, was missing. And that was my problem. I wasn't humble. I thought I still could rely on myself. And I can do that today still. Every time I choose not to call my sponsor, I'm saying I got this on my own. Every time I don't get up and pray in the morning and ask for his guidance and direction in the morning, I'm saying I can do today on my own. Every time I choose not to go to a meeting, I'm saying that I am well enough that I don't still need y'all. And it's just not, it's not true for me. So I'll go back to when it all finally, step one, pulled together for me. I had more alcohol that I couldn't remember where I'd hidden it. Finally, days had gone by, which had never happened to me before. I had not become a daily drinker until now. Now there were several days that would pass that I couldn't put any time together or recollect what had happened. And so I finally had gotten up, and I realized I couldn't remember the days. I went in to go see my son, and he just had a little vacuum cleaner that he was vacuuming around the house. And I walked in, and he didn't even care I was in there. And I thought, you ungrateful child, like, I feel terrible, and I've come out here to spend time with you. You don't even care I'm here. And so, fine, I'll just go lay back down. So I went to go lay back down in my bed, and then I thought I'd remembered one more little bottle that I had hidden somewhere. And so I went into the closet, and I got that bottle, and I went over to the sink to drink it because I thought I'd probably throw up, but I wanted to just drink it anyway. I thought if I could just get it in me, I would feel better. And so I threw it back. And when I did, I got a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and my skin was gray. My clothes were dirty. I smelled. I couldn't remember the last time I'd showered. And I thought, what in the world has happened to me? And so I thought there was this brief where y'all had planted that seed, call your sponsor. And I thought, okay, I will, but not right now. Like, if I call her, she's going to make me go to a meeting, and I think I'm going to throw up, and so I'll just lay back down. So I laid back down, and I woke up the next morning, and I called my sponsor, and I said, I'm ready. And she said, are you? And I said, I am ready. And she said, are you going to do everything I suggest? And I said, yes. And I was probably 50% sure I would. And, again, I was still picking and choosing. And she said, well, you have to be at home group tonight. And I said, well, about that, my sister-in-law is having a hard time. She's at the beach and she really needs me. So I'll be back on Tuesday, but I won't be there tonight. And she just started laughing at me. And I was like, why are you laughing? She said, honey, how are you going to help her? You can't even help yourself. And nobody had ever spoken to me like that before. And so I said, fine. So I'll be there. And I packed my husband up and my child, and we drove to the meeting in Rocky Mount. We were still going to the beach, but we were packed up the car, but we were going to go there too. And when I went to the meeting that night, I believe it was God, my God, that just opened me up enough to be willing to listen that night. And that night, this woman shared, and I'm sure that it had been shared in one of the meetings I'd been to before, but for that night, I was actually paying attention. And she said that she thought it took her so long to hit her bottom because someone was always cleaning up her messes for her. And that was the first time that I realized that, like, these things that I kept separating myself from, like, I'm not an alcoholic because I don't live on the street and didn't lose my house and all this stuff. These things that I was using as excuses to not relate to AA in general, those were my yets. Those things hadn't happened to me yet, but they were going to happen to me. And they hadn't happened to me at that point because, like I said, my husband was letting me live in his house. He was taking care of my son for me. He was the one who would call my work for me and tell them I was sick. That's why I hadn't gotten fired. He had cleaned up my messes for me always. And I finally prayed my first honest prayer, and I said, dear God, please don't make me have to lose this to get this. I'm ready. And for the first time, I finally decided to quit relying on myself. I surrendered. I surrendered to this program 100%, to my sponsor. Everything she suggested to do, I did, sometimes gritting teeth through it, but I did it. And y'all taught me how to do that. Y'all taught me that I did not have to want to do something to do it. That it didn't matter if I didn't want to do something. If it was what I should do, I should just do it anyway. And that even though I was mad, it didn't mean that I got the right to mouth off. I didn't have to respond every time I got mad. I didn't have to react. I could be quiet. I could pray about it, call my sponsor, and then I could respond to it the correct way. But I didn't know how to do any of those things. So learning how to relive life was very challenging for me, and it's why having a sponsor was absolutely essential. I would wake up and I was like, it's 9:00. Well, normally I would be drinking right now. So what am I supposed to do? So I would call my sponsor and say, what am I supposed to be doing right now? And she's like, it's a beautiful day. Why don't you take your son to the park and play with him? Like, have you prayed yet? Well, I didn't know how to pray to God. Like I said, my prayers were always like, get me out of this foxhole kind of prayers. And so she taught me about just talking to him like he was my friend and just sharing my day with him and just praying the third step prayer. That was a big part of my early sobriety and still is today, is asking for his will to be done and for guidance and to just move me out of the way, because I was so much in the way that I blocked God out all the time. I quickly, like I said, my ego was huge. I relied on myself all the time. So trying to rely on someone else was very difficult for me. And she was always asking me to do things that I thought were silly. And like I said, were reasons that I didn't do them before. But I now, looking back on it, I realize why she told me to call her at 9:00 instead of 9:15. She taught me that that's how I show respect to other people, that when I call somebody or when I say I'm going to be there, I need to be there, because if I show up late, what I'm saying to that person is my time is more important than your time. And I never thought of it that way before. She taught me how to put the shopping cart back where it was supposed to go instead of just leaving it by my car. She showed me that that was important, that it was showing respect to the people who work there. I didn't know how to be a mom. I didn't know how to talk to my child. I didn't know how to make rules. I was a big kid myself. I mean, I was like 5 years older than him in maturity level. So she showed me how to be a mom. She showed me how to teach him, how to play with him, but also how to parent him. And y'all showed me how to do those things. I didn't know how. And it's not that my parents didn't try to teach me how to do those things, but I had drank all of them away, and I didn't know how to do any of that anymore. And so I needed someone to guide me through life again. And y'all taught me the principles, how to live my life based on principles, like I said, instead of emotions, because every part of my life had just been reacting to life, and there had been no basis. And y'all showed me and proved to me that my feelings change all the time. And so if I keep making decisions based on my emotions, then my life is going to be a mess, which it is when I run my life on my own will and on my emotions. And so that has been the biggest gifts for me today is having someone that I can call for direction, that gives me clear-cut instructions. I need clear-cut instructions. They are suggestions. I can always choose at any point to go right back to relying on myself, but time and time again, I have proven to myself that that's a huge mess. And sometimes I'm still very stubborn, and I have to go through a lot of pain to remind myself that my sponsor is right and I'm not right. But the longer I stay sober, I certainly still have those moments where I think I have enough experience under my belt that I can go through the day and make a few decisions on my own, that are big decisions, and I usually regret them. But I'm that way, and sometimes that's the way I have to learn is learning the hard way. I have learned time and time again that when I choose to take my sponsor's suggestions, things tend to go a whole lot smoother. And that's what she's there for. And when I asked her to be my sponsor, I invited her into my life. Today, I'm so grateful for this program. I can't even imagine trying to do life without it. I feel so sorry for people who are going through the COVID process in general, alcoholic, non-alcoholic, who don't have this program. And today I've gone back. I renewed my license. I work now at a hospital. I deal with alcoholics all the time. And I leave there in tears and of gratitude. And I think, why me? Why me? Why did I get this gift that I get to be sober today? And I hope that will be their gift too. And what can I do to plant a seed? And thank you, God, so much for giving me this opportunity to live another day sober. It's a gift that I don't deserve and I don't take lightly. My family today, I have an 8-year-old. He just turned 8. And he's never seen me drink before, and that's a gift. I never thought that would be possible. He just had a birthday, and I didn't ruin it, which sounds crazy that mom shouldn't ruin birthdays, but I have ruined a lot of birthdays in my family's life. I ruined my husband's birthday time and time again with my drinking. Invited his whole family to show up at a restaurant and then forgot to tell him to show up too. So they were all sitting there waiting at the restaurant, and I'm passed out drunk, and my husband doesn't know what's going on, and they're calling looking for us. Invited a bunch of friends one time to have another surprise party for him, and I was drunk and didn't even make it out the door, and everybody else went to the restaurant, and he had to sit home with me because he thought I was going to die. He was worried I was going to stop breathing. So everybody celebrated his birthday without the two of us. And those were my stories. And then y'all taught me how to, like I said, clean up my street. So I got sober June 10th, and his birthday is June 15th. So it was his very first birthday, and nobody was going to ruin this birthday because I was finally sober. And so he came home from work, and he was telling me, I was asking him what kind of cake they made him at work. And he said, well, nobody made me a cake. Well, I got furious. And I called up the lady at work, and I told her what I thought about her not making him a cake for his birthday. And then I called my sponsor. I was very slow to learn. And my sponsor said, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. I told you nobody's going to ruin his birthday this year. And she said, you know what you're going to do now, don't you? And I said, no, what? She said, you're going to call her back up and apologize. And I said, no, I'm not. And she said, oh, yes, you are. This has been your problem all along. She was like, you're going to call her back and apologize. And guess what? If you want your husband to have a cake, you make him a cake. And I was like, oh. So I called her up and I apologized to her. And she wasn't super nice, but I can look that lady in the face today. And like I told you before, if I had not, every time I saw that lady, I would have replayed it over and over again. what she had said to me, or I would have not been able to look her in the eye because I would have remembered what I had done and I would have replayed that over and over again. And that would have been in the middle of our relationship always. And I can look that lady in the face today and we're friends. I mean, not close friends, but we show respect to each other. And y'all taught me time and time again stuff like that, which helped chip away at some of that ego and remind me that no, maybe I don't know what's best. And my older son is 10 years old and is an emotional basket case right now, and it has been a challenge through COVID, trying to watch him and wanting to fix things for him so badly and realizing that, like, I'm just the messenger. My sponsor has taught me I'm just the messenger. And when it comes to only giving suggestions, and the next morning I said, so do you have a plan? And he said, no. And I said, so you're just going to keep doing things the way you've been doing them? And he said, yes. And I said, okay. And that y'all have given me that gift. I know today that falling on your face and sometimes having to hit bottom can be the biggest gift in the world. And that's when we touch God. And so if I have to let him fall, I have to let him fall, because it is not my job to fix him. I'm his mother and I'm a messenger, but he's God's child. And y'all will give me the strength, and God will give me the strength to watch this. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful to be able to have emotions today and be able to sit with them and not have to react on them. I'm so grateful I have a family to lean on for support, who have helped me walk through all of this, because I would have used all of this as an excuse to drink. I have a dog today that I'm going to have to put down probably by the end of the week. And I got her 2 weeks after my husband and I got married, and she has seen me drunk and watched me get sober, and she's been through everything with me. And that would have been another excuse for me. And today I don't have to drink over those things. I don't have to go through them alone unless I choose to. I've got all of y'all, and y'all have never disappointed me. And today I know that how important my meetings are to me. There can be days where I get busy and I think, you know what, y'all don't need me. Y'all know how to get sober. And I've had a good week, and you know what, my jammies feel super good, and I think I'm just going to sit home tonight. And thank goodness I have a sponsor who stays in my head and goes, principles, principles, principles. You do not make choices based on your feelings, because my feelings tell me that I need to sleep and I need to sit in my pajamas. And my principles tell me to get my tail up and get to that meeting. And so I go to that meeting, and that's that meeting that I needed desperately. And I will leave so full of love and grace and strength that I didn't have walking into that meeting. And my whole week will go 10 times better because I went to that meeting. And then I sit there and think, and I almost miss that. I almost miss that gift because of my feelings. And it reminds me yet again that I do not know what's best for me. And I'm so grateful for the principles that y'all continue to teach me. And for all of those who are walking so much further ahead, they're handing down these little bits of information to me. And I will continue to follow you and walk with you. And thank y'all for letting me have this time tonight with y'all.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you.